Shika, you can start. It is
Yes,
7
sir.
p.m.
A very good evening to all our members and all our guests for this very important session. We just to start the session, I'll request my Vice Chairman, Mr. B. Prabhakar, Managing Director of Quality Data Mills Private Limited and Vice Chairman of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce for Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, to kindly give the welcome remarks. Please, sir.
Good evening, everyone in India, and good morning, everyone in the US. On behalf of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana chapter, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to today's exclusive knowledge webinar on 65 most common legal and business questions in USA and India, answered by the experts. We thank Chugh LLP and Chugh CPAs LLP for supporting today's session as our knowledge partner. I extend special welcome to Mr. Navneet Chugh, Attorney CPA, Managing Partner Chugh LLP, founder of Indian Lawyers Association, along with his team members joining from different parts of the world. Ms. Ashlin Sahani CPA, Ms. Deepika Singh, Executive Director, Ms. Divya A. Matthews, Partner, Ms. Vidyulata Lakshminarayanan, Partner, Mr. Jagan Mohan Tamirisa, Senior Client Services Manager, Mr. Rahul Agarwala, Chartered Accountant, and Mr. Shaurya M. Tomar, Senior Partner, all at Chugh. Thanks to all our members and guests for joining today. Now, I would like to briefly introduce our main speaker for today's session. Navneet S. Chugh, Managing Partner, Chugh LLP, is an attorney, CPA, and of Harvard and USC alumnus. He founded SABA California, TIE Southern California, SABA North America, the International Indian Bar Association, and the Indian Lawyers Association. He has also co-founded Ashoka University. He serves on numerous corporate and non-profit boards worldwide. Now, I would like to briefly talk about IACC. The Indo-American Chamber of Commerce is an apex bilateral chamber synergizing Indo-US economic engagement. IACC AP and Telangana chapter serves both of our Telugu states. IACC regularly organizes seminars, webinars, and interactive meetings for our members. IACC works closely with the state governments for policy formulation, advocacy, and representing on policy issues on behalf of Indian and American companies for trade-related matters. We work closely with the US Consulate General Hyderabad on issues related to visas, trade barriers, and other pertinent matters. We facilitate B2B meetings for inbound delegations from the USA with industry sectors in India, arrange outbound delegations to the USA in coordination with our partners in USA. We identify potential partners, buyers, etc. IACC coordinates meetings with trade development missions for promotion of bilateral trade. IACC has 12 offices across India. Members in one location enjoy the same rights and privileges in other cities as well to avail the benefits. With these words, I wish a very productive and thankful session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for remarks. Now, to start this very important session, I request Mr. Navneet Chugh, CPA, Managing Partner of Chugh LLP, to kindly take over, sir. And we thank all our team speakers for joining from all over the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Shika. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhogavalli. Indo-American Chamber of Commerce is doing a great job, and we're very happy to be associated with you and do this webinar for your members and other audience that has joined. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It's evening time, and I know you have to cook dinner or eat dinner or make dinner. So thank you for joining us. And we want to wish you all a happy Independence Day. India, as we all know, was the richest country in the planet from year one to 1750, and then the decline started. And we reached a depth of the decline in 1991. The good news is that the climb back up has started, and we're doing great. 100 years from now, people will ask what kind of people led the climb back up, and you can look at the people in your room, left and right, and everyone in this audience and all the speakers. And it's this group of people that are leading the climb back up. This century is going to be three countries, India, US, and China. And if you look back at the 2000 years, it's been pretty much India and US first. 1750 years, half of the countries, half of the world's population, half of the world's GDP. For a couple of 100 years, from 1750 onwards, the share of US and India and China declined to 40%, just 200 years out of the 2000. And now it's back up to 50%. US and India and China now have 50% of the world economy, and it'll stay like that for the rest of this century, and it'll actually increase beyond 50%. And so, for Indo-American Chamber of Commerce to start and help this bridge and build this bridge stronger and have more business happen between these two countries is one of the reasons that the climb back up will happen. And for all of you who have joined us, you will play a big role in the climb back up. And speaking of the climb back up is why we're doing this webinar, because we want to encourage all of you to double up your business and triple up your business or start a business in India. And whatever you do, please keep United States in mind. It's the world's largest economy and the biggest consumer marketplace. So whatever you're manufacturing, whatever you're selling, US will play a big role. And we want to help you come to the United States and set up a company, and we'll take care of your employment issues and real estate and setting up of the companies and governance and taxes and accounting. You will have a complete friend in the United States. We have offices all over US, East Coast, West Coast in the center, 10 offices in US and 9 in India. So we are proud that there's very few practitioners like us that have offices in US and India, and we want to help you. You will always have somebody to support you, whether it's business related or what college your kid should get into, and anything personal that you need in the United States. We do massive amounts of immigration, so we'll help you in every regard. So with that, we have Rahul Agarwal. He's CA from India
Recording
and
in
Bangalore.
progress.
We have Jagan, who's an immigration lawyer in our Washington, D.C. office. Shaurya heads our law office in New Delhi. And Ashleen is a CPA and heads our accounting practice in our Washington, D.C. Herndon, Virginia office. Deepika is an executive director and a superb immigration professional out of our Santa Clara office. Dia heads our New Jersey office and is a lawyer, corporate and immigration. Vidyuta is an awesome lawyer in our Chennai office. And do I cover everyone? And Shanti is our administrative lead and helps us run our India offices. And we have an outsourcing unit in India, and she helps us with that. But enough about us. We want to welcome you to the United States, And when you come here, we want to talk about how to set up a company and taxes and employment and immigration. And then we'll talk about some of you that want to set up operations in India, and we'll cover the same for India as well. So we'll take you through this journey. Please give us your questions. We will cover as many questions as you have in some way, shape, or form. So we start. So you have a company in India, or you want to set up a company straight in US, and you have first question is, what kind of company do I set up? Where do I set up? What about Delaware? We'll talk about all of that. So, Ashlyn, since you're with an A and the closest thing we have to Trump in Washington, D.C., so somebody wants to set up shop in US, what's your advice to them?
So any foreign company who wants to set up a subsidiary or they want to start out in United States, we recommend a corporation, a C corporation as a starting model to set up a company here. One, it's very friendly from investor point of view. You're looking at long-term growth, you're looking at employee growth, you're looking at fundraising. Corporations are the best. Though a lot of times we see, people come and they've already incorporated LLCs, because of low cost structure. They think it's an easier way to go about it. But there are a lot of withholding complications that come with it, especially in case of foreign shareholders. So we do recommend, C corporations is the best way to go.
Okay. Uh, so Dia, this I think I don't know what's going on in India, but I think every person in India wants to have a dinner with Alia Bhatt, and they want to have a Mercedes, and they want to have a corporation in Delaware. So what do you say to these people when they call you and insist that they want a corporation in Delaware?
But Delaware makes sense if you are planning to get external investment, right? Because when you start talking to VCs, etc., they will most likely expect a Delaware corporation. But if you plan to keep your operation small and keep it closely held, then you might as well just incorporate in the state where you'll actually do business. Because anytime you do a Delaware incorporation, keep in mind that you also have to get a license to do business, a certificate of authority to do business in the states that you actually do your business in, where you operate in. So from a compliance and paperwork standpoint, it's just more work. Plus, many states also have the option of conversion now. So even if you form a New Jersey or let's say a Georgia corporation now, and later on, you end up talking to investors and, it looks like you might need a Delaware entity, you can just do the conversion process at that point. So I would
Good.
say it depends on where you are.
Right. And I guess this is one of those debates that if you went to 1,000 lawyers in the United States, all 1,000 will give you a little bit of a different answer. But having done this for endless years, we have a code at our firm that if you're a small business, then you must do an S corporation, which is a kind of corporation that is a pass-through entity. And if you are doing any real estate, then you must do an LLC. And if you're raising funds, then do a C Corp. So, and unless you want to go public or raising funds, there is no reason to do a Delaware corporation because it's just additional work. If you do a Delaware corporation, then you have to, whatever state you're doing business in, you have to register there as well. So next question is, they come to the United States and they set up a business, and now they want to import some employees from India, whether it's a software IT company or any other kind of company. So let's cover immigration. Deepika and Jagan, I'll ask you about, and for the audience's sake, from the alphabets A through Z or Z, 20 of them have a visa. So there's a visa and B visa and C visa and D visa and on and on and on. but for all practical purposes, there's 4 visas we should talk about briefly. The B1, the tourist visa, O visa for outstanding workers, and L for intracompany transfer, and H for um, a specialty occupation or a worker, somebody who has a bachelor's degree and has worked in India and has a similar job in the US. So Deepika and Jagan, I'll leave it to you. We'll start with you, Deepika. Any one of those 4 you want to talk about, go ahead.
So while we're talking about setting up an entity in the US, I think if there is a relationship between the India entity and the US entity, or the foreign entity and the US entity, there's definitely L1s for the founder. There's a L1 visa for the founders, and there is also an O1 option for the founders. Talking about the L1, the minimum requirement is there has to be a relationship between the 2 entities. The employee who's trying to be transferred to the United States has to have worked with the India or the foreign entity for 1+ year. Now, there are options to choose from. There is an L1A option, there is an L1B option when it comes to choosing the L. There is the other option is the O visa, where if they have an outstanding credential, then they can opt for the O1 visa. The point to remember is that you have to have a US entity and an employer has to sponsor these visas. So just keep in mind that they have the L1 and the O1 options when it comes to founders moving to the United States.
Jagan, what about H visa
Yes,
and B
Mr.
visa?
Chugh. Yes, so the B and the H are the good alternatives. B is mostly for conducting business. So if you want to be here for a short-term period of time, especially, for example, coming for contract negotiations, signing contracts, meeting clients, or doing some initial setup for your office and all, and you're not expected to be here for a long period of time, then B1 is a good alternative. And the only thing is you cannot get paid on a B1, so it's strictly like a business. You're coming here only to conduct business activities, and you should be very mindful of that, considering that nowadays a lot of scrutiny is on way. So they will be asking you at the border for what purpose you're coming. So you should be very clear in stating why you're coming here and make sure your activities are quote unquote permissible activities. A long term and a very good option that also coexists with the LVISA is the H1B specialty occupation. Those are for people, professionals who have at least a bachelor's or higher degree, and it can be from US or from India or anywhere else in the world. They are the good crux of the workforce for any company in the United States, high-skilled professionals, and it's easier to score as compared to most of the other visas. The H1 cap under which they initially should qualify is open every year in month of March, where you should file registrations, and you can file as many registrations as you want. And for those who get selected, you need to file an H1 cap petition. And when they are approved, they can start working from October 1st onwards in the United States.
Just to add, there is no quota for the L1 and the O1, so those also work as an advantage to some of the founders.
Great. Dia, I have a question about Jagan and Deepika covered the visas. I want you to talk about green card, but before I come to you, I want to ask Vidyuta, while we're on the topic of setting up a company, let's do this collectively instead of covering US first and India later. India has 4 times as many people as the United States, so we need to pay more attention to India. So Vidyuta, what type of entity should we form in India? If a US person or company wants to set up shop in India and they don't have anything yet, what should they do? Private limited company, LLP, branch office, wholly owned sub? What's your recommendation?
If you're looking to have, if the company is looking to also have other foreign investors, it would be preferable to do a private limited company. because of the fact of how a private company works as against a limited liability, which has only partners, and also the fact that partnership is also based on your LLP structure is based on contribution and profit. So investor friendly is definitely a private limited company, though the compliance is a little more as compared to a LLP.
Shaurya, how long will it take me to set up shop in India, a company in India, if I come to you?
Okay, so based on my past exposure to such matters, I can say it depends upon as soon as you provide us all the documents, because it's a simple process, but with complex documentation. We require, unlike US, we require a lot of documents from the founders, from the parent company in US. So that is it. But if you ask me the number of days it requires, maybe somewhere between 15 days to 30 days, we can set up a wholly owned subsidiary company in India of a US based company, or to individuals coming from US, they can set up like within 15 to 30 days in India.
So you're in Delhi, Vidyuta is in Chennai. Which cities lawyers are better?
Lawyers are better in every city of India, I think. But it's just the language kind of a thing, I would say. But the curriculum and everything is good, and you find better and good lawyers in Delhi, and better than them in Chennai. I have experience with Chennai lawyers as well.
Okay. So basically, it was a pitch for Delhi that you can speak Hindi and English, and people in Chennai can't speak Hindi. Is that what you're saying? Language?
Maybe
Right.
if some Delhi client is going to Chennai, he may find it a bit difficult because of the Chennai language, the Tamil thing. Otherwise, rest when it comes to the professional thing, the lawyers will remain the same.
Yeah. Tell people in Delhi to get their act together. The South is winning. So Shaurya, can a foreigner or foreign company own 100% equity in an Indian company?
The straight and simple answer is yes. They can own 100% equity in the Indian company. We just need to check that in which sector they are coming into. Because they are, if the, as per the FEMA rules, as per the RBI rules, if foreign investment is permitted up to 100% from a foreign entity, then it's like you can have 100% foreign equity in an Indian company. They can own 100% Indian company.
Okay, so Vidyuta, can American citizens become directors in India? And if they do, then how do they get an Indian PAN or DIN?
So, any foreign national, an American national, can become a director. The requirement per the Indian laws is that the company should have one resident director. So long as that condition is met, you can have a foreign national as a director. The essential requirement for a foreign national to be a director is to get a director identification number. So this is a number that's unique to the director. So this requires a process where there is a set of documentation required from the national, like your address proof, your ID, nationality proof. Once this particular identification number is procured, then you can get appointed as a director in the private companies or a public company in India. PAN is not required, permanent account number, which is a requirement for non-residents, but it's not required for a foreign national. So only if you're a non-resident, and depending on your residency status and whether you're going to be taking up employment, a position or a designation of a key managerial person, then depending on that, PAN would be required.
Vidita, I
Thank
have
you,
a question,
Vidyuta.
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
So if in a previous life you had a DIN, a direct identification number, but you no longer have a copy of that, or you don't, remember that, is there a way to find out? Is there a database where you can run a check?
So we have the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has a database where if you're able to tell me the director the DIN number, I can do a check to see whether your DIN is actually valid or not.
Oh, okay. So
So
they'll invalidate it after some time. I see.
yeah, there are also instances where you're depending on a director whether he's disqualified. There have been instances where the MC has issued notices on various grounds when a director can be disqualified. So if your directorship gets disqualified, then your DIN will also get deactivated.
Thank you.
Okay, Dia. People call us every day, get us a green card, and we tell them you can get green card through family or business. And the fastest way to get a green card is through shadi.com. Get married to a US citizen. At first, you have to fall in love and it has to be genuine. So you have to fall in love quickly, I guess. But from a business point of view, the people come here, set up companies, and they feel they'll get a green card rapidly. What is the reality?
So, and also, how much time do I have for this? A minute?
Remember, fall in love quickly. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, the first question I ask people is, where were you born, right? Because for green card purposes in the US, it goes by your country of birth. So if you were born in India, if you and your spouse were both born in India, then you are at the slowest queue, unfortunately, for green card purposes. If by some lucky providence, you or your spouse happen to be born in some other country. Let's say, for example, I'm from Kerala, and a lot of people in the 70s from Kerala, they went to the Gulf, right? And then they would have children there. So you might have a birth certificate from one of the UAE country states, even though your citizenship is India. So then that's really good news, because that lets you get into the general, the all rest of the world category for green card processing, which shorten things considerably for you when waiting for your green card. There are different categories within the green card process if you're looking at employment based. Unfortunately, the only category which is really current in terms of not having a wait time is the EB5 investor category, which requires you to invest close to $1 million in a US business. So that's really the only category which is, which really doesn't have a waiting time. You're only waiting for immigration to process your application. The other category, I guess the next fastest category would be the EB1, which is similar to the L1A visa that Deepika and Jagan spoke about. So if you meet the qualifications for an L1A in terms of having worked with an organization abroad as a manager, executive, then you would most likely qualify for an EB1 multinational manager category. Right now, we are looking at very difficult to predict these things, but I would say about a wait of 4 years. Deepika, Jagan, you agree? If you qualify in the EB1 multinational manager category. You could also look at EB1 extraordinary ability, which is similar to the O1 that Deepika spoke about. And then after that, if you don't qualify for these two, then you're looking at EB2 and EB3, which is the commonly done process, the workhorse really of green card, employment-based green card process in the US. With that, if for somebody who's born in India, conservatively, I would say you're looking at a wait time of about 15, 16 years. And, there are additional requirements, of course, in terms of, the employer, in terms of what the employer has to do to sponsor you. But that's generally the landscape.
Thank you. So, Jagan, one of the questions is which state is preferred for a technology company? What's your thought?
So, Mr. Chugh, statistically speaking, of course, Washington, D.C. has a very big technology corridor because people have a lot of individual clients as well as they get work from the federal government through subcontracting. So it's a very good place, and there are a lot of tech companies right around the place where we have our office, Herndon, Reston, the entire Washington, D.C. corridor, including parts of Montgomery County in Maryland. So that's a very good place to begin. Um, Lately, we are seeing a surge of tech companies moving to Missouri State, St. Louis area. And the primary reason for that is because wages are low. And that's one thing I guess I didn't state earlier. The difference for the L1 and H1 visa being for H1, the wages are fixed and you have to follow that scale. For L1, you have a lot of discretion on the wages you want to pay for your employees. So Midwest states especially have a little bit lower pay scales, so there are a lot of tech companies there. And then lately, we are seeing a lot of huge surge in the Dallas region in Texas, Houston and Dallas area. So these are very good places to start for tech companies.
And maybe if somebody wanting to start a business should look at what vertical or what business they want to focus in. If they want to do pharma, then New Jersey is good. And if they want to do technology, then maybe Silicon Valley or DC or New York or Texas. And people, I think, worry about like, oh, I have to choose the state carefully because of the tax situation. And from a tax point of view, it really doesn't matter because in the US, the 50 states are like 50 countries. So you could be headquartered in Seattle, Washington, but if 80% of your revenue is from Texas, then you'll pay taxes in Texas. So tax, the secret of tax worldwide is land. The country where you operate in, on that country's land, that country wants a tax. In US, whatever state you operate in, where you have people working, and revenue being generated, that state wants a tax, that county or district wants a tax, that city wants a tax. So people have a lot of tax questions, and sometimes the answer is in one word: land. Um, so Deepika, which visa is necessary for getting a social security in US? Can any visa get me that?
Yeah, any work visa can get you a social security number. When you apply for the L1 and you're here in the US, you can apply for a social security number. When you come to the US and you get an H1B, you can get an SSN. Some of the spouses who have EADs through the dependent visas like the H4 EAD or the L2, they also can apply for their social security numbers. So any work visa will actually allow you to get a SSN from the SSA or administration office.
So Rahul, you're a wonderful chartered accountant in Bangalore. What are you hearing about the tariffs? What are people doing in India? This 50% tariff business.
So as of now, I think they are in the wait and watch mode. So the IT companies in Bangalore, especially, so they are untouched as of now. So the IT services, the electronics, for that sake, any services, electronics, semiconductors, and a lot of these export items are outside the ambit. But yeah, we have many traditional export of goods which are at risk. And I think looking for different markets and different areas of doing business is what government is looking at. Government has announced GST, complete GST overhaul, which is coming in next few months to increase domestic consumption too. So we are expecting some major changes in the GST laws in next few months.
Right. So there's a question from somebody on how to avoid these tariffs. So wait and watch is good because I think the 50% tariff won't last. Courts are also blocking some of these tariffs. There are US warehousing and FTZs, and if you use a bonded warehouse or foreign trade zones, it differs or reduces duties. So whoever is asking that question, you should look into that. Um, Obviously, you can shift production to low tariff countries around the world, and then, but it requires a change in your business that manufacturing has to be done in a low tariff country. Um, so Ashleen, question. Do we need to register a business in a particular state because we have sales in such state? Or let's say our employees went there for trade exhibit or training?
So it all depends on the nexus applicable on the state. There are 50 states in the United States. Generally, all states follow economic nexus. Now, how material that revenue is it meeting the factor nexus limits? The employee, whether it's a recurring business, you're regularly doing business in that particular state, warrants us to analyze whether we need to register in that state or not. So it can depend from state to state. The state of California would have a factor nexus, a certain amount of revenue, payroll, would require you to register in that state. New York, the revenue limit is $1 million. So it depends from state to state, and we can analyze that based on the revenue numbers.
Okay, wonderful. So the next round of questions we have, or the topics we want to cover, is about corporate governance and compliance, both in India and US. So Ashleen, Deepika, Dia, whoever wants to answer this round of questions about corporate governance, what annual filings, minutes do California, Delaware, Texas require? Do we need independent directors or a US resident director to open a bank account? Any one of you?
I'd say overall, for somebody coming from India, you will find the corporate governance process in the US relatively straightforward and simpler. There's a lot of flexibility. You can have an LLC, which is, very similar. I know Ashleen doesn't really recommend LLCs for foreign shareholders, but generally an LLC works perfectly fine. You have reduced paperwork compliance requirements. Excuse me. And you can also, I believe, elect to be taxed as a corporation, right, Ashleen? And in terms of directors, with most states, it is a minimum of one. The same person can serve as director, officer, everything. You can have a single person corporation. And as you grow, obviously you will get more directors, officers, etc. But to start out, that's generally what we look at. Also, unlike in India, there is no mandatory audit requirement for US private companies. So that also gives you some flexibility. With some states, there is a minimum tax payment, like a franchise fee. New Jersey, I believe it's about $500 if you have a corporation. In Delaware, it's based on the share capital, so that has to be structured very carefully. But mostly the governance is, I would say, common sense. There's nothing really very complicated about it.
Right.
Yeah, and just to add there, you have various departments in every state. So for any state, Secretary of State, you need to file an annual report. There's a Department of Revenue, which would require probably a franchise tax report. Again, it depends on the state you're registered in. And then you have IRS and all state income tax filing. So you have an annual tax return filing, which is again one federal and states based on your nexus in those states.
And another thing to add was, I know Navneet mentioned S Corp, but for S Corp, you have to either be a US citizen or a green card holder. That's a mandatory requirement.
Right. And I always tell clients, and sometimes they find it hard to believe, and I say to them that I know people have a crazy impression of United States, that there's a lot of penalties and people go to jail and it's very tough. But from an overall governance point of view, it's probably one of the easiest countries in the planet. For endless years, we get letters from IRS or other government agencies levying penalties of thousands of dollars, and we write one letter to them saying, well, the treasurer was sick or this happened or that happened, and they waive them. And lots of times, all this corporate governance, if it's late by years, there is hardly any penalties, there's hardly any letter, there's hardly any punishment. If somebody's doing fraud, then it's a totally different story. But otherwise, from a governance point of view, it's very, very easy.
Also to add, I know Shaurya said that it takes 15, 20 days or a month to register a company in India versus in the US, we get registrations done in like 24 hours. Some of the states allow expedited process and very simple. If you have a green card holder or a US citizen, as a director, we can get the company registered in a day. So,
Yeah,
that is another flexibility.
Yeah, that is there because we require a lot of documents from the individuals involved from the foreign side. And yes, if the foreign companies there, we require their documents and that too, the notarized and apostolization and all those things. And when you ask individuals to provide their address proof in the form of a utility bill, which should be very latest, like not more than 2 months old. So these things create some suspicion and all those things. So we have to explain a lot of things. So that's why it eat up a lot of time. But if we have the documents, we can also do like not in 24 hours for sure, but yes, within 2 days or 3 days. If all documents are ready, once we file it, within 2 days, you will have your certificate of incorporation. It's just the documentation part, as per the requirements of MCA and the Companies Act, we need that much of time. But
Yeah.
which is not so in the US, and that's the difference
Right.
between a developed and developing economy, I would say. We are still learning.
Yeah, for 30 years, I've been telling clients it takes 2 weeks, and now thanks to Deepika, people are going to say, "Hey, your Deepika said 1 day."
It comes with an expedited fee, definitely,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
it can be done.
Just while we're on this, one thing I see with many new businesses in the US, right, especially from overseas, they forget to get the workman's comp or the insurance, unemployment insurance registrations done for their employees, and those can be pretty punitive. That if you don't have the registrations in place, even if it's just one employee in one state, the state can come back months later and say that we see that you hired this person and so date and you didn't have the necessary insurance, workman's comp, all of that. And, they'll come back with no, back payments and interest, all of that. So, I advise people to be very careful with those things. Also, the classification of, personnel as employees and independent contractor, that's also taken seriously in the US. Back to you,
Good.
Navneet.
Let's talk about our silent partner in life, the government tax. I always joke that in US we have four partners: the federal government, the state government, the county or the district, and the city. All four of them have their hand out, and they want a piece of tax throughout the country, except for 9 states that don't have income tax but have other kinds of taxes. So, Rahul, what's the corporate tax in India now?
So for Indian private limited companies, which is the most common form of entities, we have a corporate income tax, regular corporate income tax of 25% for entities up to 400 crores of turnover. It has some cess and surcharge, which takes the effective tax rate to approximately 27%. Uh, However, we have a preferential tax rate of 22% plus cess plus surcharge for companies who once in a lifetime they agree to forego certain exemptions. Like we have special economic zones in India. We have various exemptions which are coming on for several years. If the company forgoes those exemptions and they file a one-time form, they can move to a preferential corporate tax rate of 22%. These are for companies which are registered in India. And from 2019 onwards, we also have a preferential rate of 15% corporate tax for new manufacturing units, which get set up in India, not on reorganization of the existing units, but if these are new units, there is a 15% corporate tax. Uh, Plus, if it's a foreign company who is operating in India as a foreign company through a branch office, representative office, or directly doing business through a permanent establishment, then the tax rate is 35% plus cess and surcharge. It was earlier 40%. Last budget, it was reduced to 35%. So yeah, if it's an incorporated entity in India, it can be 22% plus cess and surcharge in general. And if it's a foreign company operating through branch office or permanent establishment, it will be 35% plus cess and surcharge.
Okay, so it's like going to Taj Mahal. If you're a foreigner, you pay a higher rate.
Right.
Okay.
So you can own a company in India. Foreigners can own a company, but if it as long as it's a Indian registered company, you will get the beneficial tax rate. If you're operating as a foreign company without setting up an entity in India, then the higher rate.
Ashley, what's the corporate tax rate in the US?
So it depends on the tax structure. For a C corporation, it is 21%, which is the federal tax rate, and then there's an additional 6 to 8% state tax rate that would be applicable. Then, depending on whether you're in pass-through structures such as LLC and S corporations, they depend on the tax rates of the ownership, which is kind of a slab rate, similar to a slab rate in India. So depending on if you're a 37% tax bracket, your income might be subject to as high as 37% federal tax rate. When there are foreign shareholders involved, please note that in pass-through structures, you have, especially LLCs, you have additional 30% withholding. So, that's the basic tax structure in US.
So you can operate a business in the US as a sole proprietor, as a partner in a partnership, as a C corp or regular corp or S corp or LLC or LLP. But there's only one entity that pays tax, the C corp, and all the other entities, the owners pay taxes directly and are all pass-through entities. So there's only one form of entity that pays a corporate tax, and that's the C corp. And that you're saying is 21% plus the state. 9 states don't have a state tax. All the other 41 states do, anywhere from 2-3% to as high as 10 in California and Connecticut's of the world. So Rahul, what's the tax on dividends and royalties and technical services?
So if dividend, royalty, or technical services fee is paid to a person outside India from India, the withholding tax and the tax rate applicable to them is 20% as per the Indian income tax laws. It can be different for Indian residents. So if we are talking about Indian residents who is getting a dividend, then the tax rate is as per the slab rate. But if it is to a NRI, foreign national, foreign companies, it's capped at 20% plus cess and surcharge applicable on the amount involved. And there can be preferential rates as per the double taxation avoidance agreement, which India has with various countries. So the preferential rate as per the DTAAs can be taken benefit of.
Okay, good. So Ashleen, when our India company comes to the United States and they hire employees, how do they have to pay them, and how is payroll done? And do you guys do payroll or you use a payroll agency? And what kind of forms and taxes and quarterly annual forms? Can you give us a 30,000 feet view?
Right. So when you have an entity in US and you're hiring employees in US, you have to, have them on payroll. The payroll taxes, United States, there are majorly 4 types of taxes: federal withholding, state withholding, federal unemployment, state unemployment. So you have to make sure all 4 kinds of taxes are taken care of. And as Dia had mentioned earlier, there are consequences if they're not taken properly. Laws might not be strict for a lot of other, incorporations and other taxes and all, but for payroll, government is pretty strict. All the taxes, unemployment, everything has to be taken care. We, as our firm, we take care of the payroll compliances as well. There are all third-party agencies out there that help you take care of the payroll compliances. So that's the gist of how payroll is handled here.
Okay, good. Let's talk about real estate for a minute. So Jagan, Indian company comes to your part of the country, Washington, D.C., or DMV as we call it, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and they want to set up a shop. What do you recommend to them? Do a WeWork kind of lease or take up a small office, 3 to 5 year commercial lease? And there are visa requirements as well. What do you tell them?
We basically tell them to assess their needs for the next 6 months to 12 months. And there are a lot of Regis offices here where you can lease a small space and set up their shop here. And as far as establishment is concerned, that's where I work very closely with Ashley to recommend what kind of entity is best suitable for them, LLC or any other entity, depending on number of people involved. And as far as visa is concerned, we do an assessment. Most of the time, we recommend the L visa because there's a lot of flexibility on how you want to structure your office and how many people you want to hire and where do you want to keep them. And it works very well with the Regis office also.
So, Shaurya, an American company or an American individual comes to India, and can they buy commercial or residential property in India?
So, if you say that an American company, so for a foreign company purchasing an Indian real estate, Indian immovable property, it's a bit difficult. But if you say for foreign companies subsidiary in India, can they purchase? Yes, they can purchase for their business requirement, any commercial property, any industrial property for setting up their factories and all that. So that they can do. But if you ask me typically that whether a foreign company, a person resident outside India can purchase immovable property in India, that's a bit difficult. You need to go through that RBI route. You need to take that approval and then you can purchase the property. Else, you can enter into a lease up to 5 years. That is permissible. No approval required. You can enter, if you are a resident outside India, a foreign company can enter into a lease up to 5 years of period.
But Americans are worried about deposits and registration and stamp duty when leasing office space.
Yeah, so stamp duty and security deposit is generally, like if we talk about security deposit for a commercial property, it may be somewhere from 3 months to 12 months, depending upon the type of lease and the term of lease, like from 5 years to 9 years to 20 years, whatever it is. So based on that, a security deposit can vary from 3 months to 12 months. And stamp duty and registration charges depends upon state to state. Like in Delhi, if it is up to 5 years, it is only 2% of your average annual rent. You need to pay the stamp duty like this. So every state they have, because stamp duty is a state subject when it comes to lease. So every state has their own rules and regulations. And yes, when foreign companies are involved, foreigners are involved, or their subsidiaries are involved, see, there would not be any pitfalls or any disadvantages in entering into a lease in India. It's just the documentation part that you need to involve good attorneys, good real estate consultant, whom you know, whom you can trust. Instead of Googling things around, I would simply suggest go to a good attorney, go to a good consultant who can guide you about the area, about the law, about the documentation and registration of that document. That gives you peace of mind. And if something goes wrong, you can recover your security deposit. You can hand over the premises. You can leave the premises. A lot of things as per the documents.
Deepika, company comes to your state, California, and they want to hire employees. What do you tell them about offer letters and W-2s and 1099s as contractors or employee handbook? What's your advice?
So it depends. If it's an H-1B worker, he has to be a W-2 employee. He has to be on the payroll of the company. So typically, if you're working if California is your headquarter, and you're hiring people on H-1, it has to be W-2 employment. If people are coming on L-1 visas, like there's an intra-company transfer from the foreign entity to the US entity, then again it has to be a W-2 employee. Employee handbook is a good to have document in the sense that it outlines the requirements for the company, the policies of the company. So it's always good to have an employee handbook. I know that a lot of people don't have it and don't want to invest in it, but my advice to all companies would be to have a good employee handbook detailing the state laws, which helps your employees to know what are the requirements and what policies to follow and what disciplinary actions to take care of, when they are working for you. So most of the visas, when we talk about like O1s or the Hs or the Ls, are W-2 employments, which means that they have to, adhere to all the payroll taxes and payroll requirements. And employee handbook, I feel, it's a good to have document, definitely.
Vidyuta, what's the deal with an American company coming to India and they ask you about employment letters and agreements and handbooks? What do you tell them?
So generally, if the company here forms a part of the American group, they try to ensure that you have a global policy binding. But what we need to ensure is that each state has a different set of leave requirement that is to be adhered with. So the basic privilege leave, earned leave, and sick leave, we need to ensure that that is provided to each of the employees depending on the state in which they're going to be functioning or working out of if they're going to be present in India. Similarly, there are also state-specific requirements with respect to the timings, with respect to the benefits that are entitled. So even with respect to termination of an employee, some states require that you have to give or ensure 30 days notice before you terminate them. You can't just terminate them without cause. Or you need to prove that there has been an action and conduct an inquiry. So while the foreign company may still be, be the employer, if the employee is going to be in India and is an Indian employee, the employees will be subject to the labor laws of the respective states. And it's also that each state has a different requirement. So we need to ensure that the bare minimum is complied with, and that's the position.
Good. Okay, let's talk about intellectual property. As we all know, copyrights, we'll talk about copyrights and trademarks and patents. As we all know, copyrights protect creative works like software and books and music. Uh, they cover expression, not ideas. And the copyright lasts for the life of the author, plus 70 years. Trademarks protect brand identity, names, logos, um, can last forever as long as you keep renewing them in the US every 10 years. And patents protect inventions, processes, or designs, and good for 20 years. So, Dia, what's your conversation with clients when they ask about copyrights and trademarks and patents? What is your advice? Should they do them in India, in the US, or both?
Yeah. It's usually when clients come to us, they probably have some filing done already in India. But that, obviously will not protect them in the US. So they will need a separate filing with the US PTO. Once you have the federal filing with the US PTO, that pretty much gives you protection. The US is a first to file jurisdiction. So, you have to be the first to file, the priority date locks in, and then you can claim protection all around. In terms of with trademarks, we get a lot of inquiries for trademark because, when you're selling something, trademark is probably going to be very important from a branding standpoint. You don't want other people to be using your brand. So we do a lot of trademark filings, also send out cease and desist letters. And it's a pretty again, a pretty straightforward, streamlined procedure for that. Everything can be filed online. If you're already using something, you can file it as a, you can file it based on that. Or if you intend to use, then it's a different type of filing, but you have to show that you started using that mark within 6 months or so. And as Mr. Chugh said, you can keep renewing it. The other inquiry that we get often is for patents. Patents obviously are a lot of work, and you have to firstly you have to make sure that what you have is patentable, right? You have to do a prior art search and make sure this is not something that's already been covered by a previous patent. um, and I tell people, if you're not fully ready, then do the provisional patent. That can be done, and then after that you move towards the full patent.
Okay, good. Let's cover some questions. My favorite question of the day is this one here from Dr. Kishore Dire, and tough questions are like giving them to Jagan. So Jagan, the question is, what kind of impact MAGA movement may have on the prospects of India-US trade and employment-related immigration?
Right now, we are not seeing any impact on that. So for now, visas are subject to high-level scrutiny, both at the border as well as the Department of State. A lot of people are being, evaluated for compliances, mostly whether they are following the U.S. laws or not. Employment visas has not been affected, H1, L1, so once even green cards for that matter. If anything, it's just a backlog because of introduction of more vetting process. But otherwise, nothing has changed with respect to any visa rules and regulations as of now.
Okay.
I think the only thing changed is that they've started calling H1Bs and L1 workers for interviews. Earlier, there was a drop box facility where you could
Correct.
just drop box and you can get the visa, but now there is going to be in-person interviews for every candidate who's applying for an H or an L visa.
That's correct. They eliminated the draw box effective September. So everybody will have to go for a personal interview.
This next question is a question we get on a single day, everyday basis, every single day from India. How can we open a bank account in a US bank from India? Ashley, what do you tell them?
So there are certain banks that allow you to set up, if you've incorporated a company in US, you have an EIN, there are certain banks that would allow you to open a bank account based on that, but not the mainstream banks, especially post-COVID. Now, they do require an officer here. So sometime, and our attorneys can help with that, but sometimes just having an officer in place, passing a board resolution and all, and they can help you, especially in US, they can help you have a bank account in one of the major banks. But there are certain exceptions, smaller banks that allow you even without that requirement, that officer requirement.
Okay, next question for you, Ashlyn. Somebody has a company in US, headquartered in Texas, but they don't have income, they have a loss. Do they need to file tax return?
Yes, federal tax return, yes. The state of incorporation, yes. Any other state, if you have negligible revenue or if you have some employees, depending on the nexus applicability, you might have to. The loss does not particularly indicate whether you should or you should not file. It's really whether you're meeting a nexus in those states. Physical presence, economic nexus, factor nexus. Uh, We have to
Yeah, and
analyze
I'd say
three.
file a tax return. So if you have a loss, then you can use it in future years when you have a profit.
Absolutely.
So
I
please
agree.
file a tax return. There's a question on goods valued up to 800 are duty free or used to be duty free. What's the status now? The status, the government has removed the de minimis $800 number you can import without duties, that's gone. Now there's all kinds of duties, up 16% up to $80, 25% up to $200. And US travelers can bring in $200 worth of personal imports duty free. I mean, you could bring in $1 million watch before and nobody would say anything. And now up to 200 and gifts up to $100. So I don't know what the world is coming to. So here's a question. I'm a technical consultant with expertise in many technical domains. My clients are both European and US companies in aerospace defense. Okay. This person's asking for a job. Okay, great. We will certainly look up your LinkedIn profile. So the next question, in India, we register a company, we have to file AR every year with ROC. What is the position in USA? Is it like India or Dubai? I think the situation in US is simple. Every state you're in, you have to file a statement of information every year. Who's the president, who's the secretary, who's the treasurer, and who's on the board. And that's it. Shareholders, and this shocks people, that no state in United States requires the shareholders to be disclosed. There is no registrar of companies. There's 33.8 million businesses in the United States. And if they're a corporation, good luck finding out who is the shareholder. Not a requirement. Okay. Next question. If I take up a consultancy in US, I don't go to USA and I do work on Zoom and emails and they pay me. Do I need to get a work permit for this in USA? I guess the answer is simple. No. Land, wherever you work, that land's employment rules apply. You don't work on the US land. No requirement. Next question. Can a US immigration firm set up in India be 100% foreign owned or require a partnership with a local law firm attorney? Can a foreign lawyer practice foreign law in India? Via.
I believe the question is, can a foreign law firm
Can a US
own and
immigration law firm set up in India be 100% foreign owned?
so I think the Bar Council rules in India prohibit foreign ownership of Indian law firms. I think there are some recent changes, so probably Vidita or somebody can advise on it. I think they're trying to liberalize it to some extent, and I know there are some carve-outs for foreign lawyers coming in and probably advising on foreign um, law, right, for on a limited basis in India. But
And
but
what's
in
the
general, the
answer to
answer
the
is yeah.
next part of the question? Can a foreign lawyer practice foreign law in India?
Well, practice, I think, is a pretty broad term. I don't think you can just go and practice law, but obviously you can go in and advise, right? You have meetings, so foreign lawyers might come in and advise on US law or UK law on a short-term basis, and that's fine. But I don't think you can set up a practice in India for that.
Right. Okay. Um, Jagan, if we decide to let an employee go due to non-performance and there's a 1 month notice period, what legal consequences we might face if we ask the US resident employee to leave?
So the termination has to be in accordance with the rules and regulations, depending on the visa they are. If it is visa especially, then you are required to notify the government about the termination and withdraw the underlying employment-based petition, the basis on which he is working for a company in the United States. If it is a permanent resident or a US citizen, then you have to serve a proper termination notice. But you have to be careful for the reasons you're quoting in the termination, just to cover the legal basis.
Okay, good. Is it mandatory to file BE exemption form in US? I don't know what BE exemption form is. Does anybody know? Okay. Ashlyn, I am willing to buy a small CPA firm in the US. What do I need to worry about?
I think the BE exemption form, sorry to interrupt, maybe about Ben form for withholding tax. Anything
Okay,
close to what we can think of as Ben exemption forms, Ben and Ben E forms, maybe.
right. Okay. Mandatory to file. I don't know of any mandatory filing, but do you, Rahul?
So it is filed for withholding taxes. So different payouts which happen from the US to entities in India and elsewhere outside US, there is a withholding tax requirement. And if there is a Ben form, like for different kind of entities and different kind of nature of services, different forms are there. And based on those forms, there can be withholding tax exemption, or if it is applicable, withholding tax will still be there. But I don't think there is a mandatory requirement as such. But the organizations need to maintain those forms, and based on that, they'll be withholding taxes for the Indian vendors.
Correct. So there's no filing anywhere that needs to be done for these forms, but in event of an IRS audit or anything, then these forms are required to be produced, especially if you're making foreign payments.
Right. Okay. We'll come back to questions. Let's go to our let's talk about mergers and acquisitions. So Dia, if there is a merger going on between a US company and India company, and a client asks you like, hey, I know nothing about it. What advice do you have for me? What do you tell them?
I would tell them to hire us because
Okay.
we have both legal and tax. And so with most M&A propositions, you need advisory on both these aspects,
Right.
legal and
But
tax.
I guess the process is the documentation, two aspects of a M&A documentation. Well, three processes, the letter of intent and the engagement. And I always tell client, please get us involved early on because clients come to us with LOIs already signed and all kinds of crazy complications. So get a lawyer involved with LOI. Then there's documentation, and which is a stock purchase agreement or an asset purchase agreement. And then the third is due diligence. And so do you help with all of that, Tia?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Vidyuta, let's talk about India. If one of our clients wants to acquire a company in India, uh, and they ask you, how would you conduct due diligence or what are the issues? What's your advice to them?
Like Dia says, hire us. But I think when we're looking at the due diligence aspects, I think one of the main pointers that or roadblocks that we have is relating to any kind of existing foreign investments into the company. So ensuring that all filings with the Reserve Bank of India are in order is something that we insist on, because unless those filings are done, if there's going to be a new foreign investor or new foreign investment into the company, that can't go through without the existing filings being in place. That is one major roadblock. Also, recently, we've had an amendment to our laws where all, except for a small company, all private companies also need to hold their shares in dematerialization form. So, and there's a severe backlog in companies getting their shares dematted. So you can't, if you're going to be acquiring existing shares or if there's going to be a fresh issuance, this will take time, and I mean, the process has been taking quite some time. So that's something that we need to ensure that the company has its shares in demat form. the main legal aspects that we try to see or ensure that are in place are your foreign form filing with the Reserve Bank of India if their shares are allotted in to a foreigner, or if there's an existing share acquired by a foreigner, your forms with RBI shouldn't be in place. Your compliances with the ministry MCA or your register of companies should also be in place, because a lot of it have a penalty and imprisonment. And especially if a company is coming in and they want to appoint a director, we need to ensure that the liability is not passed on to the a director who's going to come in. Other than this, the major aspects would also be to ensure that we get consents from lenders, we get consents from any major contractor or supplier of the company, where if there's a change in control clause, we need to ensure that they get prior consents for that. So in our diligence exercise, we ensure that we cover all of this to ensure that these roadblocks are addressed and captured in the transaction documents, whether we do a share subscription agreement or a share purchase agreement. We ensure that all these actions are undertaken before the investor comes in, so that the liability to the investor is limited.
So Vidyuta, in US, when we do M&A transactions, it's rare that we need a government approval of any sort. If there is some defense involvement, then we end up with some government regulatory approvals, but 99% of the time, we don't have to ask any government agency. But with India, FEMA and all are still involved with all M&A transactions, right?
Yes, yes, sir. So there's specific, like how Mr. Shaurya had already pointed out, there are certain sectors where the foreign direct investment is not allowed 100%. So if it is allowed only 51%, to the extent that the foreign company is doing investment up to 51%, you're okay to do it. You don't have to go to the Reserve Bank of India to get the approval. But if you're going to breach the sectorial thresholds, then we need to get the prior consent from the Reserve Bank of India. And this is also a process that takes quite some time, because the documentation involved the RBI seeks a lot of documents from the foreign the proposed shareholder. It will want to know who are the beneficial owners of the entity. So to that extent, that's a process that takes quite a bit of time.
Rahul, from a tax accounting point of view, what advice for American companies wanting to buy Indian companies or vice versa?
So, capital gain taxes are the most important aspect when we are talking about acquisition of shares. So, first, if you are talking about foreign companies looking to buy Indian companies, there is a like long-term capital gain. Earlier it was 20% with indexation or 10% without indexation of cost inflation. Now long-term capital gains are fixed at 12.5% plus cess and surcharge. Short-term capital gains are 30% plus. And the definition of Indian asset, that is pretty wide. So if there is an indirect transaction also between two foreign entities, and shares of two foreign entities are changing hands, but the underlying assets are lying in India. If there is a company subsidiary of another, like it's a classic example of what happened in the Vodafone case, wherein a lot of demand was raised by the tax department and there were changes in the tax laws. So yeah, if two foreign entities are transacting and there is an underlying Indian entity, the valuation of the Indian entity needs to be done separately, and the tax calculation for that entity also has to be done. And there is a withholding taxes involved even if two foreign entities are changing hands for the shares wherein an Indian entity is involved. And even for the secondary transfer of shares, the foreign direct investment limits have to be seen. That is that part of the FEMA and RBI compliances have to be seen. if Indians are going to buy shares outside India, then we have again the RBI compliances, liberalized remittance scheme is there. I'm going into the FEMA part of it, but both are interrelated. And from a taxation perspective, again, the tax law applicable in the jurisdiction in which the transaction is happening for an Indian buyer, that will have to be seen. And because global income of Indian buyers and sellers are taxed in India, the Indian tax laws also have to be seen. The person can get the benefit of double taxation avoidance agreement, but both the angles will have to be analyzed in detail.
One of the questions is about DTAA. Is there a double tax avoidance agreement between the United States and India? And the answer is yes. High level point of view, Rahul, what are the most important parts of the DTA when it comes to income or capital gains or dividends?
Right. So dividends, for instance, so there is Income Tax Act which prescribes rates for dividend, for royalties, for capital gains, and we have the DTA rates. So, for example, dividend is 20% as per income tax, but the cap as per India US DTAA is 25%. So anyone will take the beneficial rate as per the income tax laws. However, if we talk about royalty fees for technical services, the income tax law rate is 20%. However, DTAA has 10% and 15% rate for different categories of payments. So the DTAA beneficial rates can be taken. So similarly, like capital gains are there. Capital gain also is 12.5% as per the income tax law now for long-term capital gains. However, as per DTAA, it is around 20% in India, US. So income tax is more beneficial from that perspective. So for different aspects, both Indian rates and the DTAA rates can be seen, and whichever is more beneficial can be taken. And both the countries, they allow claiming foreign tax credit of tax paid in each other's jurisdiction. So no one ends up paying double taxes, but they may end up paying whatever rate is higher as per the two jurisdictions.
Okay, good. So only a couple of topics left. Let's talk about litigation. Indian companies that come to US are obviously quite concerned about litigation. US is a pretty litigious society, almost like India as well, except for the US litigation moves rapidly. California, there is a law that if a case is not tried uh, within 5 years, it's dismissed in favor of the defendant with prejudice, meaning the lawsuit cannot be filed again. 90% of all cases it finish within a year and a half or two. 90% plus cases settle. I don't know what happened to the Varanasi 2-acre land dispute that started in 1878, 147 years ago. I don't know if that got resolved. A couple of years ago, I looked, it hadn't. So yes, Indian companies need to worry about litigation in the US. But given that 90% of the cases settle, then I always tell clients to put emphasis on settlement and not on fighting, and don't waste resources on endless discovery and unnecessary motion practice, um, and try to settle as quickly as possible. Best time to settle is before litigation's filed. Take whatever hits you have to take and take them early on, um, because ultimately things will get not very good unless somebody's cheated you and you need to recover money. Then, of course, there is justice, and of course, it'll happen fast. Except for half of the time, if somebody in US is not paying, that means they're not in business, and it's a dead company, and so we have to be careful when we file lawsuits. Um, but it's a cost of doing business, and lots of things to do to prevent litigation, agreements being one, having a lawyer look at an agreement before you sign, and putting mediation clauses, putting arbitration clauses in the agreement to reduce litigation costs. So, Vidyut, I wanted to ask you, um, if we have a cross-border dispute and we have arbitration in the US and our client wins, and I come to you and say, hey, enforce this in India, can I do that?
Yes, yes, sir, we can enforce it. So long as it's not against the public policy or it doesn't involve any action of fraud or it has followed the due process of law. As long as this is done and the appeal period the timeline within which you're allowed to do an appeal is has been satisfied, then within 3 years you can come and enforce a foreign award. And this is also subject to the place where the award has been issued should be a reciprocatory country. The Indian Arbitration Act is comes under, we follow the unitrol model in the Geneva Convention. So if the country is a reciprocatory country, then we can have the award enforced in India.
That's good. So in a way, arbitration awards are getting enforced better than awards from courts.
I think it's become a more preferred way. And we also ensure that all our contracts has an arbitration clause. And more often than not, we try, if Indian arbitration doesn't work, we advise clients to go for SIAC, which is your Singapore International Arbitration Center. That seems to be the more preferred international arbitration center here.
Right. Rahul, we're getting down to 3 minutes. So I'll cover a couple of questions. There's a question from somebody in New Jersey. What are the considerations in employing a US-based H-4 visa spouse of H-1B who is an Indian national as a trainee in India, remote under India payroll? So, Diya, Jagan, can somebody hire a US-based H-4 visa person as a
This is
trainee in India, remote under India payroll?
yeah, we get this
Yeah,
question every day. As you said, it depends on land. Where is the person physically located? If the H-4 visa holder is in the US, in New Jersey, then they have to have work authorization, even if they're working for an overseas company in India.
I guess if they're in India, then US immigration laws don't apply, right?
Yeah, if they're in India, but if
yes,
they're
correct.
physically in the US, then they have to have work authorization.
Right. So, one last question of Rahul. So, Rahul, we get a lot of questions about transfer pricing and what is it that the India US companies can charge each other, and what's the markup on captive IT BPO services? What's your advice?
Right. So the US laws, US transfer pricing laws do not prescribe a specific rate. They, like both the US and Indian tax laws, they rely upon the arm's length pricing model. US has not prescribed specific rates, they are more flexible. India has prescribed safe harbor rates, like for IT and software services, they have prescribed rates between 17 to 18%. Even for if it is a KPO providing high-end services, technical services, then the rate prescribed is between 22 to 24%. Both the countries, they allow advanced pricing agreements. So if it is a high stake, large transaction involved, prior agreement with the tax department can be done, which will be in the range of 15 to 22% is what we have seen. And then the entities, they can do the business without any risk or without any fear of tax notices coming in. Uh, but otherwise, also, if there is no advanced pricing agreements, uh, the documentation will have to be maintained. There is FAR analysis, functions, assets, and risks, which is the guiding principle in transfer pricing documentation. The entity which is performing more functions get more profits. The entity which is deploying more assets, more capital investment, gets to get more profit, and the entity who is taking more risk, market risk, business risk, commercial risk, they get more profit. So if it's a low risk, low capital investment back office in India, then they can go by the safe harbor rules, or like as I said, between 15 to 22% of markup depending upon the nature of service. If it's a call center, it could be less than 15% also. Uh, and like maintain the FAR documentation, the intercompany service agreement, and every year there are transfer pricing industry benchmarking reports which is prepared, which gives the industry standards that what is the profit margin acceptable, and the companies who operate uh, with non-related party customers, what margin they are having, and with that industry benchmarking, they can sail through the transactions and the tax queries as and when they come.
So Rahul, there's another question for you. Somebody in India has an entity in US. It's not a subsidiary. Do they have to report that in India anywhere?
So I think there are two angles to it. One, reporting requirement comes under the FEMA laws. I think there is APR filing which has to be done with the RBI every year. In that, all the foreign entities and investments are reported, is what I believe. And from a tax and transfer pricing perspective, if the US entity is transacting with an Indian entity and there are common shareholders, directors, if control is common, if name is common, if one entity is providing more than 90% of business to other entity, one entity is dependent fully on other entities. So these aspects also trigger the transfer pricing requirements, and definition of associated enterprise covers.
Okay, and somebody made money on crypto. How do they have to report it in India, and what is the percentage tax?
So this is crypto is something which is not defined, but capital gains is the most common reporting format which most people report it as. So the sale price minus purchase price ideally is reported as capital gains if someone has sold the assets. And for some individuals, reporting of assets and even foreign assets is required. So if crypto is held in accounts held outside India, it's reported as foreign assets. In India also, it is reported as asset in the tax return.
Ashleen, somebody wants to know, they have distributing a product in USA. What is an ideal transfer pricing margin?
Uh, is this from India? From India
Yes.
to US, if they're only say, okay. So, pure distribution entities, it is usually an arm's length pricing. And I think Rahul can elaborate on that, but the transactional net margin method is used. So as you mentioned earlier, there's no specific percentage listed in US, but around 5 to 8%.
And US doesn't care if you're selling it at a loss, right? Because it is what it is, right?
Correct. But from
Yeah.
India perspective, I believe they have to be at a particular margin.
Yeah. I'll take the next question. What certifications are required to acquire healthcare clients in USA? It's a super complicated question. You have HIPAA, you have SOC 2, you have ISO 27001. For large hospitals, there's HITRUST, CSF, and all kinds of CMS certifications. Um, then there is startup selling apps, there's FDA clearance. So super complicated, but all doable. And the last question is for Shikha. Shikha Dilpreet wants to know, he's a practicing CPA. I love this question because it's the future of what's going to happen in the world. He says, I'm a practicing CPA having office in Montana and operating from New Delhi. Montana is the second smallest state in the United States, population 1.1 million. He wants to know, Shikha, is there any facility to register with IACC India for clients from USA? All
Yeah,
yours,
sure,
Shikha.
sir. We'll take this question later with the member.
All right.
Yeah, so I
Don't
think
answer if he's
we
not a
are.
member of IACC, don't answer.
No, if he's not a member, but if he like to be a member, then we'll definitely go send him all details of the membership, and I'll discuss with him because we have the contact details of the participants. So, and without taking much time, I think this is a wonderful session, very enriching, very informative, and thank you each one of you. And just to inform all the members and participants, we'll be sharing the recording of the session along with the details of the team members from Chugh and LLP, so that in case if you need any professional services or you have something which is confidential, you can discuss one-to-one, and you can send your doubts and ask them your queries through email or contacting their team members. So this is a wonderful session that we had, and I, on behalf of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana branch, convey special thanks and immense appreciation to all our speakers, Navneet Chugh, Ms. Ashleen Sahni, Ms. Deepika Singh, Ms. Dia Matthew, Ms. Vidyuta Lakshminarayanan, Ms. Jagan Mohan, Mr. Rahul Agarwala, Mr. Shaurya Tomar. Thank you, each one of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
And
Shikha. Keep up the
we
great work
thank
with
all.
IACC.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We are
Recording
extremely
stopped.
grateful to all our members and guests for joining today, and grateful to Chugh LLP for all the support for today's session. I thank my Vice Chairman, Mr. Prabhakar Rao, sir, for taking time and participating in today's event. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll conclude this session with this. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.